Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I really appreciate you asking me to do this interview.
So thank you. Firstly, thank you very much for accepting my invitation and accepting to be on my show.
hmm
So I thought to tell about you and the work that you are doing and the work that you already did to this planet to my audience.
Well, I'm a 42 plus year television engineer. Been doing a lot of everything. My family started. It's a family business, really. My dad started out in television in the late 50s and early 60s, and then all three of my brothers and myself are all in television. So we all grew up in it and do various things. I'm an engineer. I have a brother who's a producer director. I have another brother who's an anchor. But we all grew up in it, and eventually I made my way to working at NASA doing television, which was a very big deal because as a child I was a big space program fan. I remember watching the Apollo 8 Christmas Eve broadcast from around the moon. That's when I was like 7 years old, and that stuck with me and has made me interested in space ever since. So when I got a chance to go work for NASA, it was fantastic. It was a dream come true. I got to Oh, well, our first job was out at the Dryden Flight Research Center, was doing covering shuttle landings. It was just after or actually it was returned to flight after the Challenger accident from 1986. So it was 1987 when I got there, and we covered the shuttle landings. We had single camera microwave trucks that would go out on the lake bed and would cover the image, the shuttles that came down. And then I was lucky enough to be on a crew that got to work around the shuttle and under the shuttle, seeing the crew come out of the our orbiter, and then we would stay behind and do the post-landing tile inspection. You know, the shuttle had a lot of very unique tiles, and they had to inspect them every mission. And so we'd use our camera to document that information, sending it back live to the Johnson Space Center in Houston. And that ran its course for about 3 years, and the contract changed. And then the contractor I was with got the contract back in Houston, which is where I was from. So I got to come back to the Johnson Space Center and work there for 10 years. And that was, now that I look back, and it was a playground for me. I got to do just about everything you can think of. I got to, you know, interact with astronauts on a daily basis. Um, I did used to fly in the zero G plane, what they used to nickname the Vomit Comet, which I did a lot of. But that's the plane that they did the parabolic arcs, where they would simulate zero gravity for 30 seconds at a time, and that was both work fun, I guess you call it that. But I got to do that for a couple of years, and then for many years I scuba dived out at the WEDF, the Weightless Environmental Training Facility, which is where the astronauts practice their spacewalks. And that was basically scuba diving for us. So we were safety divers, and we had what they call float cameras, and they were cameras, and I would have to keep the camera on the face of the astronaut while they worked because they wanted to see what the astronauts were doing at that time, and that was always fun. And then beyond that, I worked because I was a television engineer. I got to travel for NASA for doing documentation of, like, one of our big things was space station construction back in the 90s. That's when the International Space Station was being put together. So we got to travel to California, got to travel to Moscow 3 times to document the construction of that. That was seeing the difference between the United States, the way their space program builds, and the way the Russians did, was real education. And then the last thing I did for NASA before I left in 2000 was actually go to the Baikonur Cosmodrome for the launch of the first International Space Station crew, Expedition 1. And that was all the way down, like I said, to Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, which is a unworldly kind of place. It's like in the high steps of the planes up there, and it's just it's surreal to be there, being a bit of a space historian, to see that stuff up close. But that's when my career in NASA ended. That was basically due to government contracting. When your job's gone, it's gone. And so I had to get back into the regular television. But that I went to start doing remote television. I went and helped start the first high definition television network here in the United States with Mark Cuban, owns the Dallas Mavericks and various other things. And then a couple of years later, I ended up going to work for a company called NEP Group out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, doing the same work, working in remote television. Basically, anytime there's a live sporting event here in the States, the big tractor trailer TV trucks show up, and that's the equipment that's used for any given show. But that also has been exciting. I've gotten to work 4 different Olympics, got to go to Rio for the Summer Games down in Rio de Janeiro. I worked on the experimental 3D television for ESPN 3D for a couple of years. But basically, I'm kind of trying to get back into the space business. I started being more of a space enthusiast and space communicator over the last couple of years, and going to launches. And my wife's family, where I met her down in the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas, is now the home of SpaceX's Starbase, where they're building Super Heavy and Starship. And so, since I have family down there, I get to go down there pretty often and take a look and see what they're doing down there, which is very exciting. And I'm also, my biggest pursuit right now is trying to get myself into space with the new space tourism, space commercial space, that kind of thing. There's talk about some reality shows where the winner would get to go to the International Space Station, just like the 3xEmmy crew right now is on the International Space Station. That's all commercial. They don't like to call it space tourism, but that's basically people paying for seats to go to the International Space Station. And I'm trying to find a way to get that kind of thing working for me, because I would, like I said, it's a lifelong dream as a child to go into space, and I'm not giving up on it.
So, what is the best thing that you liked in the work that you're doing?
Oh, at this point, it's the space communications. I really have discovered my favorite thing to do. I guess my niche is communicating my excitement about space and helping to inspire others about space, especially younger people. I volunteer out at Space Center Houston, which is the visitor center here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. And that has been exhilarating on a daily basis. I can't wait to get there and just talk to people and share not only my knowledge and my excitement about it, but to open their people's eyes. One of the best things I like to do is when small kids come in, I try to encourage them to ask questions, get their minds thinking about it. Like we have at the Johnson Space Center, there's a Saturn V. It was the rocket that took us to the moon in the late 60s and early 70s. It's a flight ready. Well, it was flight ready back in the 70s, but it was one that was due to budget cutbacks. They didn't fly it, so it's a flight ready Saturn V. And to have not only just regular people, but kids come in, adults and kids seeing this rocket, they can't appreciate the size until you actually see it. It's a standard line we use, which is, there are 3 appropriate responses when you see this rocket laying on its side: is shock, oh my God, and oh, because it's so big. And if you ever get to Houston, you've got to come see the Saturn V rocket. It is very impressive. But yeah, just my biggest thing I do now is try to encourage people to really appreciate space and as our future. A lot of kids I talk to, they have the opportunity to not only go to space, but go work in space. And within the next 10, 15 years, we're going to have 5 or 6 space stations, commercial space stations. And they're going to need people to work there, not just astronauts doing the astronaut thing, but actually people, engineers, technicians, doctors, all kinds of things, plumbers. That's NASA. One of the things NASA's looking for, just commercial space looking for, people who can do things like plumbing and electrical to do that, to take care of their space stations.
So tell me your experience about ISS.
Oh, ISS, yes. Well, like I said, back in the 90s, we were tasked with going around and document the construction individual modules. So we ended up in Los Angeles a couple times where they were building the truss structures, basically the backbone of the space station. And that was all done by a really brand new, what they called cold extrusion, which is a technique where they drew metal through a die, but not by heating it up. And of course, it made it stronger at that point and lighter. There were various other payloads and projects here in the States, but the big one was going over to Moscow to see them construct the Zarya module and the Zvezda modules. And we got there early enough, but they were just skeletons, so we got to crawl around inside of them and document the construction, and also go up to Star City, which is the Russians' equivalent of the Johnson Space Center. It's a crew training where they would train their cosmonauts, and to see all those really just historic facilities they have there. They had the equivalent, the same as everything that Johnson Space Center had, NASA had, but they're in Star City north of Moscow. And to interact with the cosmonauts and learn everything there. And then for the International Space Station launch, I got to go with 2 other NASA engineers to Baikonur. We were there actually using prototype high-definition television cameras to document the launch and getting to go see a place I'd only read about in books and only seen a few pictures of. It's still to me kind of a semi kind of dream. Sometimes I think back and I said, did I dream that or did I actually see stuff? Because the Russian program, unfortunately, had declined over the years, and so their launch facility was basically a couple of active buildings and launch pads, and the rest of it was basically left to rot. And to see things like, well, I got to go see at the time, this was in 2000, the Russian space shuttle, Buran. We were allowed access into. We weren't allowed to take pictures of the actual flight shuttle Buran on a Energia stack, and we got to walk around and look at it, and just it seared into my mind the images of it. Unfortunately, about a year later, the roof on the building collapsed and destroyed it due to rust and lack of maintenance on it. And there's currently 2 other mock-ups there at Baikonur that are potentially could suffer the same thing. They were the next 2 orbiters they were going to use, and people are trying to get them removed from there, but it's a lot of red tape and so forth.
So 40 plus years of experience. So what it taught to you, and what is your contribution to the world?
Well, like I said, my experience is now when I'm 60 years old is, you think you know everything, but you don't. You need to pay attention because there's always something new to learn. And to basically, planet Earth is in trouble. We need to help it, and we need to inspire people to help improve the lives, not just their lives, but everybody's life. We are, as a people, this is our only planet. I know Elon talks about making us a 2-planet society, but that's still a long way away. We can't wait for that kind of thing. We have to improve the planet we have now. And I've always found that space is one of those unifying subject matters you can get people to talk about, and you can find a common ground on it because everybody has this image of space and what they think it is. And you can turn it around in space. One of the biggest things we use space for is to monitor the planet, satellites, weather satellites, all kinds of stuff. We can see the big picture in space, and NASA has led the way for many, many years on that. So anything I can do to encourage people to look at the bigger picture and see, hey, we got to improve this planet, not just for us, not just for our neighbors, but for the entire planet. And that's from ecology to economics too.
So how this space study is helping the mankind who is living on the planet?
Well, like I said, it allows you to, space lets us learn about other planets and other environments and help us learn from our mistakes. Besides the obvious satellites that can image the planet and see storms and study rainfalls and study temperature differences and stuff like that. A lot of it is the technology that has come from the early space program helps drive all the technology. Without the Apollo programs, the moon landings, we wouldn't have our cell phones. The technology that came about because of that, the miniaturization, that technology can be used to help save the planet, to improve emissions, to electric cars, zero emission vehicles. It's a whole slew of things. NASA has a whole project called Spin-offs, which they talk about all the technology that's been developed and how it helps the economies of the world and so forth. And that's always been a good inspiration too, is seeing what NASA's always coming up with new technologies and cooperating with commercial partners to help these new technologies get out there. Because sometimes it takes a little, if you don't have somebody who doesn't believe in the investment, maybe NASA does, and that's where that goes.
So from long time you are able to see the vehicles which are going to into the sky, and you are seeing the evolution of the technology. So where we are today?
Well, where we are today is we've got a lot of good hardware and people trying to take that hardware and do something with it, but it's still an uphill battle. A lot of politics, a lot of businesses, people who are ingrained in the old way of doing things. And that's kind of a saying we have, is that it's not the people who are excited about space that you need to communicate with, because they're already there. It's the people who aren't excited about space or new technology or the environment. Those are the people we need to reach out to, the politicians and the business leaders. Those people need to be brought on board and shown what they talk about. The one thing that a lot of people who go into space astronauts, even the private astronauts on the New Glenn or New Shepard and Virgin Galactic flights, is the overview effect. A lot of astronauts have said once they are up in space and they see the Earth as a single sphere, all the borders disappear, all the geographic areas become just Mother Earth, and that helps change their perspective on the world. The people who are not on board, those are the people we need to get up there to see that, to encourage them to say, hey, we need to start thinking bigger picture here. And that means stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about somebody else. I like to say don't think about me, think about we.
So, like you said, Elon says, human need to be multi-planetary species. We need to go, and he's working towards it. And recent inventions, recent work also of his is making a lot of youngsters like me believe him and believe what he's saying, because he proved something that is not happened before.
Oh, absolutely. Elon is an encourager, encourages me on a daily basis. He's inspiring in his own self. Now, you can people like to take some of the things he says and does and try to twist them around, but Elon's main drive is to improve the world. He does want to make us a multi-planet species, and so he's taking upon himself and not waiting for other people, but doing it himself to get us there. And that's the kind of person I want to I don't want to encourage, I want to be behind, I want to promote. He just, everything he does says we can make us better.
So you said you learned a lot in this experience of yours. So what is that particular thing that made you uh, think that I have changed my perspective, which was there like 40 years back, today what you are?
Oh, well, I think that just chalk that up to maturity and paying attention. Um, I was raised to be a nice person to everybody. And when you get out and grow up and you become older and you start getting experience, you get married, you have kids, you have grandkids, you start realizing that's a really important thing, and you want to spread that. When you've got kids, you can share that thought process with them, and then of course they take it with their kids and so forth. But you can't just sit there and worry about just your little group. You need to start thinking bigger. And so, like my volunteering, that's something I consider a very important thing to do to help mankind, to help spread the word. It's a small thing. I mean, it takes, I can only do so much. I'm only one person, and movie stars and television personalities, they have other options or other ways of doing it. But it's about personal responsibility too. Being a person, being a nice person, and helping spread that and help stand up for the weak and promote goodwill.
So what you don't understand about space study?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What you don't understand about space study?
What I don't understand about space study? Ooh, that's a lot. I'm a television engineer by trade, and I did not finish college for that, but it was, like I said, it was like a family business. There's a lot about the space science that I try to understand. I think I grasp some things like black holes and that kind of the Big Bang and black holes and all the connections holds a great interest to me. I've thought about that since I was a little kid. The first time I heard about a black hole and how, and I actually at the time, what I understood about the Big Bang and black holes, they seemed very similar, like they were joined in some way. And I've heard some scientists since then saying that the creation of our universe, in theory, could have been the creation of a black hole in another dimension or another universe kind of thing. And there's this connection. There's a lot of just a discussion about how that could work. But that whole area of cosmology and just the way our universe works is very, very intriguing to me. Couldn't explain it to you, but I like to pay attention, like to learn what I can about it.
Do you believe that the world exists apart from our mind?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're just, we're just an individual. Our minds are limited. We can only sense and deal with the reality we have. And one of the big things in my life is being able to connect with somebody else's reality. Like when I met my wife, to me, that was now I realize it was a connection of my reality with her reality, and then our kids' reality, and then so forth and so forth. Um, yeah, the world is much bigger than us all, but we have a responsibility to make it a better place.
So how your television engineer experience helped you in understanding space?
Oh well, uh, that's more about how you take care of space, how you work in space. I'm what I consider a component level systems guy. I can take a bunch of big. I understand, what television is as an industry, as a science, you might want to call it. It's still done exactly the same way they did when my dad was doing it in the 50s and 60s. You have a camera, you take a picture with that camera, you transmit that picture back to a central control room, you take that picture, you manipulate it, you record it, you put it out, and you send it out to the world. The technology is a lot more, went from analog black and white to color digital 4K, and now we're into internet protocols and so forth like that. So it's all about systems. It's just building blocks. You plug your different blocks in and you make the system work. If you understand what this block does and this block does, you put it together and you make a system. And in a way, space space travel is a lot of the same way. You've got rockets, you've got motors, you've got fuel tanks, you've got control systems, things like that, especially like on the space station. Space station to me is very, very similar to the kind of environment I work in. There's multiple systems that interconnect, whether you have communications or imagery or whatever it is. That I feel has taught me to understand that part of it. But as far as space, the limited, the opportunities of space, space is humongous. People don't really understand how big space is and the distances. Like people talk about going to, people ask me, how long does it take to get to the moon? It takes 3 days to get there. 3 days back. How long does it take to go to Mars? When you're doing it at the right time, 6 months. Well, they also don't realize that that kind of distance also means that your communications, your videos, and your audio, like back to Mars, can take up to 15 minutes. So you've got that disconnect and so forth. So once you get out there, you've got to start thinking about, oh, you can't rely on mission control. You've got to be able to do it on your own. So as that part of it has taught me that once we get out there, once we start traveling out to the solar system, we're going to be kind of on our own. We'll have home to help us, but we've got to plan. We've got to plan very well and rehearse and think everything out really well before we go.
Are we able to send artificial intelligence machine out of the planet and uh, uh, do research and get the information?
Oh, sorry, say that one more time. I lost the first part of it.
As a human beings, can be able to create a artificial intelligence machine which will get all the information which is there out of the planet?
Oh, absolutely. I think artificial intelligence is a key to our exploring anything, whether it's the bottom of the ocean or out in outer space. AI to me is not just like the robots that walk around and talk to you. AI is just about anything. I mean, we've got AI on our phone. It's a tool. Tools are things we create to help our jobs easier, our lives be easier. So absolutely, I think AI is going to play a huge role in it. But I'm not a believer in only unmanned exploration. I think it's a balancing act. You send the robot probes with the AI to go learn as much as they can, give as much information, and then at some point, man has to go because we really haven't explored until we've been there. Sure, you can send the satellites to all the planets, but until we've been there, it's not really fully explored. And that's why I'm like excited about the Europa Clipper, which is launching here in a couple of years, which is going out to the moon of Jupiter, Europa, where they know it's an ice shell moon, and they know there's liquid water beneath it, and the potential for life. And the Europa missions will be very heavily using AI to be able to make decisions about, pre-program things, and then when things don't go right, they've got to have options. Like the current rover, Perseverance, on Mars has a AI that allows it to drive to travel a lot more efficiently than the previous. I forget the previous rover, but instead of having to wait for commands from Earth, it actually takes a picture and then makes the decision about the best, and then it tries it out itself.
So, what NASA is doing with the International Space Station on Antarctica?
Antarctica? That I hadn't heard. I'm not privy to that one. Sorry, I can only read so much.
So, how much we have explored as a human beings about space?
How much? Oh, we've just barely scratched the surface, and scratching the surface is being generous. If you think about science fiction and people talking about like Star Trek, that's a good example. Like people like to use is if you look at that future. That's a future I would love to see if I live long enough to see that kind of future where we're out there exploring the planets and we're doing it peacefully and we're learning as a species and we are bringing other species in with us. That to me is the ultimate way of doing things. But right now we're just barely scratching the surface. Commercial space is really going to push us out to the moon and to Mars and to the asteroids for mining and so forth. But as far as exploring, we've just barely scratched the surface.
So are we able to get different minerals on the other planets?
Say that one more time.
Are we able to get different minerals that we are not getting on this planet
Oh,
on other
minerals,
part
yeah.
of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not so much we can't get them on. Like they're talking about mining the moon. Well, the moon, interestingly enough, the reason we're going back to the moon in 2025 is that we found water ice. NASA found water ice on the South Pole. And anywhere you find ice, water ice, you can live because you can take that water ice and you can melt it and you can purify the water and you can drink it. And then you can basically recycle that water. The space station is about a 96% recycling right now. So you can live wherever there's water ice. But then the great thing is you can take that water and you can break it down into its constituent parts, hydrogen, oxygen, and that becomes rocket fuel. And you can use that as your rocket fuel to go places. Then you can also take that hydrogen, oxygen, and you run it through a fuel cell and you can make electricity. The South Pole is kind of in shadow some of the time, so they'll need an alternate, besides solar cells, they'll need an alternate form of power. But yeah, there's all kinds of things. They're talking about helium-3 on the moon. That's a potential future energy source. But yeah, there's all kinds of minerals not only on the moon, but they know in the asteroids they're rich with gold, nickel, titanium, all the minerals you can think of, and they're in quantities that dwarf what we have on this planet. So the hard part though is going to be getting that stuff back, which of course makes it more expensive. But we'll see where that goes. There are people working on probes right now to go do some test mining on asteroids, and they'll be launching next 10 years or so.
So our sensors have limited capacity. It can do limited things. So whatever the technology that we as a human beings created, uh, we are using it in order to reach long distances. So are we able to find out by sensing with our five sensors, are we able to understand there is other species or other things in the space or with whatever the capacity that we have, or we need a technology that is more than uh, that that is more than our sensors?
Good question. Yeah, actually, one of the things in the last 10, 15 years has been a study for exoplanets. I don't know if you've been seeing that, where they're using optical telescopes to sense other planets around other suns. And it was always theorized that there would be, but it took years before they discovered there are other planets, other solar systems. And the technology's gotten really good where they can not only tell that there are planets, I guess I can explain. What they do is they point the telescope at a sun or a star, and they watch for the light to dim. And in theory, that's when the planet, like you have the sun here, the star, and the planet passes between it, and the light dims, and they can see that. Well, not only can they tell it's a planet, they can tell its relative size. They can see how quickly it's moving around the star. They can look at the visual signatures, the infrared and so forth, and determine if it has an atmosphere, what that atmosphere is made of, its temperature. It's amazing what they can do just from using those visual tools to see what's going on in those other solar systems. So that's, they've discovered thousands and thousands of exoplanets now, and some are candidates for potential life. They look for what they call the Goldilocks zone. Any planet that's in an approximate distance, say the Earth is from our sun. They look for planets like that, but they found some amazing planets that circle their star in days, not years, but days, which is crazy fast. But yeah, you're right. Our five senses are limited, so we need technology to help expand those senses. I'm waiting for the next generation to hear about the next generation of not only exoplanet discoveries, but what they can start as they refine their sensors, like James Webb Space Telescope, which went out. It won't be used for that kind of thing, but its new system for mirrors and so forth is going to be able to reach farther back in time than Hubble has. And of course, Hubble just discovered the farthest known object. They found a star that they dated back to be 900. Was created 900 million years after the Big Bang, less than a billion years, which is the youngest thing we've ever seen. So you can only imagine what James Webb's going to see with its ability to see even deeper into space.
So what about the communication system in the space?
Well, that's we're kind of limited by physics. Radio waves move at the speed of light, and so far we haven't found anything that moves faster than the speed of light. I know there's a lot of theoretical people working on the theory of traveling faster than the speed of light. There's a lot of physics you got to beat to make there. They're talking about wormholes and other odd space oddities. But for right now, we're stuck with radio waves at the speed of light. One area that does show promise is lasers. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the second version of the Starlink satellite that Elon Musk is putting up uses lasers to communicate from satellite to satellite. And that allows them to, instead of having to rely on ground stations for every satellite going up and down like this, they can bring a signal up to a Starlink satellite, and then they can use lasers to communicate between the others. And that way they don't have to have as many ground stations. Now, that technology actually started back in the 90s, where NASA was experimenting with laser communications from the shuttle down to the ground. And I believe the space station has a similar system that they've tested. But the idea is eventually they would use lasers to communicate, like, say, to Mars or the moon. Not that it would be any faster, but it would be a higher bandwidth, because you can compress a lot of information to a laser beam, and you give it enough power, and it can make the whole way. And you just have to have a system that can track it, so that keeps them lined up. You can allow for not like I said, not a faster communication, but a much higher bandwidth, which is going to be really important in our future, being able to communicate in both directions too.
We understood light speed a long time back, but why still we are not created any device or anything that travels with the light speed?
Oh, you mean a space vehicle of any kind?
Anything which travels with the light speed. Why still we didn't created anything like with that?
Well, from what I've read, the amount of energy required to travel at the speed of light is almost infinite. But they're still working on it. I mean, they talk about solar sails can reach percentages like 50% speed of light, depending on where you're going. There's also plasma drives, which would allow you to accelerate. I've actually read some material where they think that if we could get to about 20% the speed of light, travel within the solar system, it would be much easier. And 20% of the speed of light is still moving pretty fast. But like I said, there's a lot of new technologies like the plasma drive. Former astronaut Franklin Cheng Diaz has a plasma drive that he was getting ready to fly, actually be test flying on Space Shuttle back before the Columbia accident. And because of the Columbia accident, the shuttle program shut down, and they decided not to use it. And I have to check and see where he is at on that. But plasma drives, I think, are our best next step, because you can accelerate for long distance and then turn around and slow down and get you 10 or 15% the speed of light.
So what do you say about Neuralink?
Sorry, say again?
What do you say about Neuralink?
Oh, Neuralink. Oh, boy, I've just I have to read up on that. I haven't read enough about Neuralink to understand it. It sounds promising. I mean, the idea of being able to connect, I'm assuming from what I've read, it was correct about interconnecting the human brain for faster communications. That's been a dream since I was a kid. I've been reading in science fiction, the ability to plug yourself in to a computer or other device. But yeah, I got to do some reading on that. Now I got to make a note of that.
So why I asked that, because as a human beings, if we are able to explore the organic things like our human body, what is happening inside the body, if we can explore completely, is that study helps us understanding the energy and the capacity and about our senses and the limitations of it, so that we can create something uh, uh, which travels faster and which gets information faster from the space.
Oh, yeah. Anytime you understand any organism, whether it's us or something else, you increase your knowledge of everything. You potentially increase your knowledge of everything. The more we study about ourselves, about our bodies, the way they work, of course, we can improve our life longevity, I guess. And so there you can take that longevity and extend your knowledge. People want to talk about living 150, 200 years. I would love to live that long because I'm excited about what's in the future. And if you can carry that knowledge, a lot of what I've in my heart about the human species problems we have is forgetting what we've learned. Um, we learn something and then we forget about it, and we have to relearn it. Well, if you extend the lifespan of a human being, that kind of problem starts to go away, because even though you've got computers and you've got memories and got libraries and you can store this information, having that information active in someone's mind and talking about it and sharing with other people is very important about keeping the world conscious of something. The old line is, if you don't study history, you're doomed to repeat it. So war and plagues and outbreaks, same thing. If you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. So extending people's lives helps increase our collective memory of things, and therefore we don't have to relearn from our mistakes, and we continue take our energies and put them toward studying the solar system.
Are we able to put data centers in the space?
Oh, data centers, absolutely. I'm sure that's going to be one of the next big things. Not only for like relaying information, but also storage, because you want to, our collective memory is important to keep, and they do have facilities, of course, on the planet where they have data storage. But getting it off planet is advantageous, because in case something happens, and also, a solar flare with a large EMP could wipe out a lot of information. Well, you put them out in space, you can harden them, and if you have, like, say you had a series of them orbiting the planet at any given moment, the planet itself would shield it in theory, so you could protect that kind of information. But yeah, data centers are the next big thing. I'm surprised there's not more talk about that, to be totally honest.
Could you try again?
So, what kind of thinking for a human being helps in understanding space better?
What kind of thinking? Well, there's the we, not me, that I said earlier. If you think beyond yourself, if you think about the people around you, the people on the planet, and so forth, that helps to open your mind to what can we do. And space is it's the next frontier, and it's limitless. So just thinking more about what I can do, what you can do, what we can do, and think about what could we use. The space has got infinite ideas out there. So just opening your mind up to those kind of things is the best thing I can suggest.
So, what actually made you to come into space work? Because you are already into television uh, uh, work. So, what made you? Why that transformation?
Well, like I said, I've been a fan. I've been a space enthusiast since I was a kid. I watched all the moon landings. I used to write NASA and get flight plans and autograph pictures of the astronauts and so forth. And I always held that love of space, that sense of adventure to me. And then, like I said, when I got old enough and I had an opportunity to get a job working for NASA, that was a dream come true. And it's just been building and building. And now I've in the last couple of years, decided to become a space communicator, and it is the most satisfying thing that I can imagine. Sharing my knowledge and sharing my enthusiasm. I've been called high energy before, and I accept that description with open arms. I have a high energy. I'm 60 years old, but I move like people half my age, and so sharing that enthusiasm is my thing, I guess. This is the only way to put it. But space has always been near and dear to my heart. And, I do want to go into space. I hope one day I do. But I want to encourage others to get as excited as I am about it.
You worked as an engineer for a long time, engineering. So have you ever thought or have you ever uh, uh, think that about the medium which will help human to send information as far as possible from our planet?
Well, yeah, I mean the whole idea of, I mean, technically I'm in the media business. I mean, I help create uh, imagery and sound and information and so forth, and that's a very big important part about communicating. Communications is the biggest thing that we can do with each other. I mean, without communications, we can't share ideas. We can't, we wouldn't be where we are without being able to communicate, and that's the basis for all of our livelihoods is communication. You've got to communicate. So if you've got something interesting like space and you want to communicate about it, communicate it to other people, um, you have the right tools and the knowledge. And I like to think my knowledge has helped not just the average person watching their favorite football team or Olympics or something like that, but helped when I worked at NASA. I actually, at one point when I was at NASA in Houston in the mid 90s, I seriously considered my options for future employment, and I thought I could stay at NASA forever. Well, unfortunately, government contracting doesn't plan out that way, and so I wasn't able to stay. And so I took my what I'd learned there and went back into commercial television. But like I said, I haven't gone far from NASA. I still have a lot of friends working there. I'm reconnecting. Recently, I've started reconnecting with some astronauts that I worked with a lot. Don Thomas is one of them from STS-70. He and I have started talking about doing some things together, and it's just exciting. Communicating with people is just exciting.
So your experience with astronauts?
Oh yes, that was something that I had to keep pinching myself a lot in those early days. I would be around because my work. I technically my job was working in what they call the public affairs office. We did the NASA TV at the Johnson Space Center, and PAO was technically our boss. And so we would do all kinds of things. Like, okay, so when you have astronauts, they get a lot of media requests. They get requests from either their hometown or somebody wants to interview them. Well, it's real tough for an astronaut who's working to get and go fly someplace, to be interviewed. So we had a TV studio in Building 2 South in Johnson Space Center, and the astronauts would come to our studios, and we'd set them up when we used NASA TV satellite to connect them with whatever news organization, whether it was their local TV station or sometimes we get the BBC or it was just about any place in the world. Especially when we had the Japanese astronauts, they used to do a lot of media back into Tokyo. And so you'd interact with them, not only just for that, but on a daily basis. We'd be doing educational programs. That was one of the favorite things to do. Was we had an astronaut who came in and wanted to do an educational program. In fact, Kalpana Chawla from the Columbia flight, KC we called her, we worked with her. That's at least 2 years working on several educational programs, and she ended up wanting to redo the voices of them instead of having translations done for different dialects and different languages. She decided to do it herself. So I got to spend a lot of time around her, and it was very sad when the Columbia accident happened and she was killed in that crew too. So I like to think I had somebody I knew pretty well on that flight. So it was very personal on that one. But yeah, so we got to deal with the astronauts on a daily basis.
Uh, any particular experience that you cannot forget in your life?
Did anybody? Oh, any astronaut experiences?
Yes.
Well, one biggie was when John Glenn, the former Mercury astronaut, came back to fly on the shuttle, and John was an icon as a kid. He was an icon to me. He was one of the original 7 astronauts, the Mercury 7, and so to get to meet him was a dream come true. But then, like I said, because he was getting a lot of media attention, he would come in and spend time and doing his satellite interviews. But there would be times we'd come in there and be waiting, and he would just sit down and we'd just start talking, and we get to hear stories from him. Some of the astronauts that flew on the Mir space station, they came back with some unbelievable stories that I don't dare ever repeat about their time on the Russian space station Mir. But yeah, it was a lot of times I get to talk to people, talk to the astronauts and their experiences, and that's one of the other reasons I like doing this stuff is because these are real people who shared their experience, and now I want to share my experience.
experiencing and consuming this space energy, how you feel?
Say that one more time.
Experiencing and consuming this space energy, how you feel?
Consuming and experiencing space energy. Wow, that's an interesting question. I never thought about that. I'm gonna have to think about that one. But that's, yeah, it's space energy. I hadn't thought about it like that.
Because you are collecting information which came from the space very closely, and
Ah,
you are
okay.
experiencing and consuming it, how you feel?
I gotcha. I gotcha. Wow, that's a makes me really think about what I'm doing. Experiencing space energy. Wow, you got me thinking to work on that one. But yeah, I can see that. I can see that. That's a great question, Say.
So at last, do you want to say anything to the people who are watching and listening to this conversation from anywhere on this planet?
Yeah, just like it's space is our future. I mean, like I said, I've talked to kids about there are kids I talk to who will at someday, not a lot of them, but some will work in space and generations on. I hope my grandchildren get the opportunity to do that. But we all benefit from what we do in space. The technology, like I said, we've developed. The technology we're doing, the work being done on the International Space Station right now, which will be continued by commercial space stations in the future, about the medical studies, the production of pharmaceutical products, materials process. It's unlimited, and so we all benefit from a space economy. And this space economy is growing and growing fast, and people need to realize that, and that's where our future economy is going to be, is space, because that's the next frontier.
So what do you say to young technologists like me, who are engineers and developers who are working on technology? What advice you will give to them?
Keep going. Go where your heart takes you. Something becomes interesting to you, see something, read something, study about it, learn as much as you can about it, and then share that information. Because, like I said, we are a collection of people with memories, and we have to share, so we all learn from that. But like I said, yeah, if you find something that interests you, go for it. Don't ever say, don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. Keep on it. Keep studying. Learn is what you want. And I've got a saying that I like to share. I'm smarter today than I was yesterday, and tomorrow I'll be smarter than I've ever been, which to me means you can never stop learning.
So one last observation of yours. What is your observation about my work? Have you seen any videos of mine?
I've started watching a few of them. Yes, I like them. I like them all. I like this format very much. I think you have a great future in this kind of thing, and I encourage you to keep going.
So exploring space and exploring minds.
Correct, exactly. And you know what? They're almost pretty much the same thing.
So thank you, Andrew. I hope because of your presence and because of your energy, I'm sure in coming days a lot of things are going to change because of your knowledge and because of your contribution to this planet, and also to the next generations. Your knowledge and your work is going to should create impact and help mankind and also other species on this planet.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Yes, sir.
Can I also put this video and audio clip on my podcast, website, internet, social media, everywhere with your permission?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Andrew, again.
Thank you, Saeed. Take care.
Bye.